The PorscheSport podcast, powered by Porsche Center Leeds. Test drive the new Porsche Taycan and experience soul electrified.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The podcast will start.
The PorscheSport podcast, the only weekly podcast to bring you all the latest Porsche motorsport news and opinions. The Porsche Mobile 1 Supercup, World Endurance Series, Le Mans 24 Hours, the IMSA WeatherTech Championship, Porsche Carrera Cup, the 24-Hour Series, SRO Championships, Esports, and exclusive interviews. Make sure to subscribe on your chosen podcast platform. For more information and exclusive news, visit PorscheSport.com.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the PorscheSport podcast, because we have the 2019 Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup champion and championship leader of the 2021 Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup, Josh Rogers of Coanda Simsport, joining us today. Josh, welcome to the program.
Oh, thanks for having me. I've been since Luke reached out to me a few days ago about this, I've been looking forward to it. So glad to be here.
And it's our pleasure. I mean, it's been let's have a brief talk about the season so far. I mean, it's been, I think, the most hotly contested Tag Heuer Porsche Esports Super Cup so far, but it's gone pretty well so far, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, this year's been it's been crazy, to be honest. The competition always somehow finds a way to step itself up each year. So we've got to be on our toes and constantly pushing ourselves to try and then raise the bar. But yeah, ultimately this year's gone really well. We've been focusing a lot on consistency, especially after the first round with my mistake there. Kind of put ourselves on the back foot. I think we were like 8th or something after the first round in the championship. So to be where we are now with 2 rounds to go, I'm surprised to say the least. But we've been focusing on the consistency, trying to get through that. Obviously the way the racing's panned out this year, very draft dependent and very strategy dependent. So, picking and choosing your time to make moves. Obviously, we saw that a lot over the weekend at the Nürburgring. So, it's been a main focus for us, but I think we've been managing it as well as we can.
Indeed, yeah. Kind of going a lot of the Nürburgring Nordschleife at the weekend. It kind of reminded me when you guys were going down the Dottinger hole, the big long straight at the end of the lap. It kind of was more like watching Talladega than the Nürburgring. It was like you say, the draft that these cars are giving off in the sim at the moment it's extraordinary.
Yeah, it is. I think it's around maybe a 12 kilometer an hour advantage. Almost like we're just hitting the nitrous button. But it makes for exciting racing. It keeps the pack close together. Not saying that it wouldn't be otherwise. I mean, this series is so ridiculously competitive anyway. Mm-hmm. I think, even if the draft wasn't the way that it was, everyone would be so incredibly close. But yeah, it keeps the pack together, makes the racing exciting. Stressful for us drivers at times, but exciting for everyone else watching on.
But I bet it is. I guess it must be difficult to sense who's got the pace. Are they sitting there? Are they hanging on by their fingernails? You can never really tell sometimes with the draft. I mean, Josh, you've got an incredible record in your time in sim racing. So many wins, so many championships. But tell us about that very first experience of sim racing for you. When did you first get that feel for it?
Well, I guess the first time I started playing racing games was a long, long time ago. I was probably 4 or 5 years old on my brother's PlayStation 2 playing some Gran Turismo. But I didn't really delve into kind of serious sim racing until I guess I started on iRacing in 2014. I probably didn't tend to take it super seriously until maybe the start of 2016. Then really kind of pushed on and focused on that. Obviously, I was using it alongside my karting more, I guess, as a tool back then, and an area to have some fun. Obviously, now things have changed, and this is the priority, and obviously we're taking it incredibly seriously. But so I guess my first experience was at quite a young age. I've always been into motorsport. My family's always been motorsport driven. So, it's kind of I've been involved in it one way or another, whether it was through esports or through real racing. But yeah, it was quite a long time ago. I'm surprised I can remember that far.
Well, I have to say, I was with you as well, the Gran Turismo generation as well. But it was PlayStation 1 for me, mind you, I might admit. But now that was, of course, a lot of people will know you from obviously your incredible esports success. But tell us about you mentioned karting there. Tell us about where real world racing, karting, etc., fitted into the story at the beginning.
Yeah, so I mean, I started karting when I was 7. Dad convinced me to get into it. My brother was big into motocross long before I was born. So more or less, yeah, it's been a part of our family. I wasn't necessarily so much of a fan of two wheels, so we went the karting route, and yeah, from there, I mean, initially it was a casual thing, and then it definitely turned into something a lot more serious. I think after my first couple of years, we started competing in state championships, a little bit later national championships. Varied success, varied luck. I mean, we won a couple or a few state championships along the way, but never could get the illustrious national one. But yeah, I mean, it was for me, I guess, definitely as a kid growing up through school. It was a career goal of mine to turn it into a real racing career. Mm-hmm. I think at that point in time, I probably lacked the motivation to really, explore all the avenues necessary and put in the effort to try and find the money. Obviously, that's always a massive talking point. But yeah, I mean, I stopped doing that a couple of years ago to focus on the sim racing side of things. But obviously, if the opportunity came up, I would try and manage both of them at the same time. I think it's pretty clear that esports and sim racing in general is growing at a rapid rate. Ultimately, I kind of want to be there riding the wave as it kind of grows, and there'd be no point stepping out of it to kind of pursue something else. So I would need to try and do both of them at the same time. But yeah, so it started at a very young age for me, and went through quite a lot of years of competitive racing, whether it was joyful and frustrating, all the above as racing can be. But no, yeah, it's been it was a long and enjoyable ride.
I bet, yeah. And of course, at the moment, we're heading into the last 2 rounds of the Porsche Tagor Esports Supercup. It's known as the biggest event in sim racing. Certainly, in my view, it is. And this would be, if you were to hang on, would be your second crown. Given your ability in the sim, but also your real world experience in racing karts, what would your thoughts be of getting behind the wheel of the real world equivalent of the Porsche Cup car? Might there be an opportunity to do that, do you think?
Who knows? We'd have to wait and see. I mean, ultimately, obviously, it's something that I definitely wouldn't say no to. I think it'd be interesting to see the differences. Obviously, the sim, there are correlations in technique. I mean, you see plenty of real world guys jump into the sim and they do a great job. Obviously, there are little quirks and things that you can do in the sim that might suit the sim and not necessarily be super realistic to the real world. So that's kind of something that you need to be able to adapt to.
Yeah.
But no, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, there's been plenty of sim races in the past that have jumped into cars and been extremely quick, or even the other way around. I mean, you look at Mitchell de Jong, for example. Obviously, he did a lot of racing a few years ago in rallycross and such, and he's rapid on the sim. Or you've got guys like I think Enzo Benito did the Race of Champions as well.
Yeah.
On that, I mean, Baldwin, I think even Brendan Lee did a little bit of that too. So there's been plenty of different scenarios, or Rudy Van Buren as well. So I mean, there's so many different guys that have kind of stepped over or vice versa and have done well. So it'd be interesting to see how I'd go. I think obviously it would be unfair to expect to be extremely strong right on the first go out. Obviously you still need to try and adapt to it. It's no different to if you're driving a new truck on the sim. But yeah, it'd be interesting. If the opportunity came up, I definitely wouldn't say no. But fingers crossed, maybe we'll have to have to pull some strings.
That's a hint, Porsche, if you're listening. Tell us about your journey with Coanda, Josh, because Coanda are known as one of the real forces in sim racing in general, but especially in the championship, which you're in at the moment with such a big contingent. But tell us about your journey with Coanda, how you got involved with the team and how it's progressed.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been with a few different teams over my sim racing career. First off being All Star Motorsports, then I moved over to TTL Esports. This was, quite a few years ago. I asked to join Coanda a few times. Obviously, I wasn't developed enough at that point in time. Third time's a charm, though. So at the end of 2018, I started this career, I suppose, with Coanda. Initially, I wasn't necessarily expecting too much. Ultimately, all I wanted to do was, obviously I wanted to bring results for the team, but I also wanted to improve myself. Yeah. It always been the same case in the past that I tend to learn off other people quite well. And when, you kind of join a new team with new faces or people that you've potentially looked up to in the years prior, which it was how it kind of was for me. You see them doing something, obviously it's working. So you want to, you want to try and replicate that. And having those kind of guys around you certainly helps to do that. So, as soon as I kind of joined Coanda, I was immediately onto the data trying to kind of just figure out what I was doing differently. And there's obviously some things potentially that I was doing better, but there's other areas where there were weaknesses of mine. So, tried to work on those as best as I could. And, obviously the first season was really, really strong for us, winning both of your SGT World Championship as well as PESC the first time rounds. And obviously the start of last year, we moved to Germany in the team house here that we have in Germany for Coanda and in partnership with VRS as well. But obviously last year was a little bit more of a challenge. I think probably more so personally for me. Kind of adapting to the change. But the team was there every step of the way trying to help me through it. So we're kind of more of a big family, I guess, rather than a team. And I think that's, while we're also competitive with each other, at the same time, we're kind of there when we need to be, pull each other up. So it's not so much of it's a super competitive environment, but it's it's more one of kind of support than anything else, which is awesome. I couldn't ask for anything more than that. And I think that's a big reason why this year's gone the way it's gone so far is because of that support. So it's a great bunch of guys, great bunch of people to be a part of. And it's been an awesome ride so far. Hopefully it doesn't end anytime soon.
I'm sure it won't. Well, that was going to be my next question. Tell me about the Coanda House, because I've heard bits and pieces about it, but I understand this is quite a unique thing to have the whole team under one roof. But tell us about it and tell us how much of an advantage it is. You mentioned the support network, but for you all to be under one roof, tell us about it.
Yeah, so unfortunately, it's not quite big enough to have all of us here, but we do have obviously Mac, David, Mitchell, Philip, and Kanipia are more on a management standpoint, and in and out we have Ironchin as well at the same time. So it's not really something that we've seen in sim racing. Plenty of teams have more so training areas, but not necessarily a house where everyone can kind of live, almost, do their dream, and have it as a profession. Obviously the sim room out here that we're in now is separate from the house, which does make things a bit better. But there's plenty of advantages, being able to kind of talk with your teammates about something there in real time, maybe potentially use different different forms of language, whether it's, obviously talking with your hands. Race drivers tend to do that quite a lot. We do it as well. Just kind of, it helps kind of get your point across a little bit more. I think having kind of everyone here together, we can kind of streamline things and work on ourselves a little bit quicker as well. Obviously we've got a gym here as well, which we work in. So we're trying to kind of improve our physical fitness from that standpoint, which I think it definitely helps from a mental standpoint as well. If you have more energy in general, you can allocate that to more important areas. But yeah, it's been awesome. There's been no negatives, quite literally none. And yeah, obviously, okay, when races go pear-shaped, maybe then that's a little bit awkward. But other than that, it's been it's been awesome. And yeah, I guess the main advantage is having everyone here to be able to kind of bounce ideas off kind of right there on the spot when you need to.
I guess it must be a little bit more realistic, I suppose, if well, like you mentioned, if something goes pear-shaped, then if you're at the track, you have to come back to the garage and look your teammate in the eye who you might have just put in the gravel. But I guess that means, for me, I would imagine, does that make it easier to kind of bury the hatchet when these things are going to happen in racing, aren't they? They will, especially in the tightness of competition you operate in. I mean, I guess it must be easier to just say, right, okay, we're gonna move on from this.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, for example, the incident with Mitchell and I at Spa, it wasn't something I was super frustrated about. Obviously, I knew that, I mean, if I was to be, that would just make the situation 10 times worse. He already felt as bad as he needed to, which obviously you never want anyone to feel super bad. But if we were in vice versa situation, I would have felt really bad too. But, you know, we had a chat about it. It was all good. You know, it's not like we're enemies of each other. I mean, probably one of my closest mates. So, I think had we not been in the same house, it probably would have been a little bit more difficult to kind of resolve that, I guess. But yeah, you're definitely right. I mean, having to, it does make it a little bit easier to kind of put things behind you as well. And we do a really good job in general anyway of kind of separating the sim side of things from our personal life. You know, it's something happens out on track. It doesn't necessarily mean that it should impact anything else. So yeah, but it's helped kind of build those skills as well, I guess, for sure.
That's good. Well, of course, it's well known that, you know, at the top level of sim racing, the amount of hours of practice is incredible, how much time needs to go in. But of course, time is one thing and what you do with the time is another. I mean, what techniques do you use when you're preparing and when you're practicing to try and get the most out of the time you're allocating to your preparation?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of us do it different ways. For me, I generally tend to mainly just focus on driving. Just trying to do as much driving as I can, primarily hot lapping, or, you know, if I feel like I'm struggling over the long run, then I'd do some stints. I mean, I do tend to come back and look at the data quite a bit, and less than some of the other guys, which is obviously an area I can probably improve on. But yeah, for me, you know, in the 10 to 15 hours that we usually spend a week practicing for a series, most of the time I'm just doing short runs, just trying to build up my speed. I tend to kind of be able to improve my consistency by just trying to do consistent short runs, rather than working on it over a longer run. And I think obviously with these short format races, it's not so much of a big deal. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the other guys in the team might allocate a lot more of their time to data analysis, and stuff like that. It kind of entirely depends on how people interpret the information. For me, I'm very much of a kind of learning by feel and kind of visual. Some other guys prefer to have, you know, hard proof in front of them, i.e., you know, having squiggly lines, more or less. So yeah, I tend to prefer to kind of allocate most of my time to driving, but we each do it in different ways that works the best for us.
Do you have a palate cleanser for when you just get really angry with something with your kind of regular car, let's just say, and you think, right, I need to take my mind off this? Is there a palate cleanser that you go to when practice is getting a bit much?
I mean, we often have movie nights sometimes.
Okay.
You know, just something to kind of take the mind off sim racing in general, I suppose. Or, you know, maybe go work out or go for a walk or a run or something like that, you know, just to try and kind of get your mind off it. But yeah, I think movie nights are probably the most common thing we do at this house regarding that kind of stuff. But I mean, again, that's another advantage. You know, you can kind of socialize with your teammates in a different way.
Yeah, that must be nice. That must be a big thing. I mean, we've seen, you mentioned it earlier. I mean, the sim racing world has progressed so much in the last 12 months. It was already on an upward trajectory anyway, but obviously with what's happened, it's brought it on a lot. But from your point of view, what would you like to see as the next step for sim racing to take, or what do you think it should be?
I mean, obviously, it's important that sim racing remains its own thing. Obviously, with real racing, it's never going to overtake that. Let's be honest with ourselves, and it's never going to be able to compete with it either. So I think it's important that it's kind of remains its own entity in a way, no different to how you've got obviously it's a very wild example, but something like CS:GO, it doesn't really have another competitor, or League of Legends, World of Warcraft, that kind of stuff. Like it's its own entity, and it does well because of that. So I think it's important that sim racing kind of tries to go in a similar way and tries to, at least from a competitive standpoint, I feel like everyone should be able to, or everyone competing at that level should be able to make a living from it. Ultimately, I think most people's dreams is to be able to work in a field that they're incredibly passionate about and do something that they enjoy. And I think, giving that opportunity to all the competitive sim racers out there would be the best thing. Obviously, at the moment, it's definitely not like that. There's only really a handful of people that can do that, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. But yeah, I think kind of hoping to see it go in that kind of direction would be awesome for the scene in general. But again, not trying to kind of make it compete with wheel racing either, because that's just a fight that you're always going to lose. So yeah, I mean, it's got its own pros and cons, and there's plenty of things that we can do in the sim, whether it's format related, tracks, cars, that can't be done in the real world. So there's plenty of different avenues that can be explored regarding that.
It would be a pretty expensive exercise to jump in a Lotus 79 and go around Long Beach, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you crash it, even worse. Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. I think it's got for me, sim racing has a very important part in the overall motor racing ecosystem, but it's one part of it rather than a complete alternative. I totally agree with you there. I mean, you've that comparison between sim racing and real world, you've obviously raced against the very best sim racers in the world, but a lot of many real world guys are stepping up as well. Do you notice any difference in the racecraft, in the way that a top sim racer goes about their racing and a top real world racer goes about their racing?
For sure. I mean, there's usually, when we're racing against drivers from real racing, usually they're always a lot more aggressive. I think potentially they have a little bit more comfortability under them, but also at the same time, we're used to having to race with, the risk of netcode and all these other kind of things. So we usually have to leave a little bit more space because of that. Obviously, we don't want to put ourselves in a situation where we might get a penalty or such. So we do kind of have to always have that in the back of our minds, which I guess is probably why we're less concerned about that, or more concerned about that. But at the same time, definitely from a racecraft perspective, there's plenty of different things. There's plenty of things that I learned even for Virtual Le Mans, for example, last year. Nick was saying quite a lot of stuff about traffic management and things, and that was something that I definitely used in the race, and it helped us. So it's more kind of little things like that. From a driving style perspective, to be honest, when we kind of compare data to real drivers, it's not necessarily massively different. It's really maybe just little quirks that we're doing in the sim that don't necessarily work in the real world. But more or less the base kind of technique's very similar. So usually it's only kind of really minute differences in racecraft and such. But yeah, they're definitely a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah, I can back that up. As for me, as a commentator, you think, yeah, that was a bit over the top. Now, as we've mentioned, Josh, you have an amazing CV of lots of different titles and race wins, but every athlete has a goal that they're still chasing. What is it for you?
I don't know. I guess we just take them as they come. Ultimately, I want to win. That's my goal above all else. Obviously, turn this into a career, I suppose, as well. But to do that, We need to win some more. So, I mean, last year's loss was definitely a kick in the butt and a bit of a fire. Well, the fire kind of started to burn again in the stomach, and a bit of extra motivation to make sure that we did the best job we could this year. So, for me, I'm an incredibly competitive person, and ultimately, I just want to kind of do the best job I can in whatever field that is. So, yeah, in this, I guess the goal for now is just to continue winning. Yeah, long term, who knows? It's there's so much changing in the world at the moment, especially in sim racing, that yeah, I guess it's a little bit difficult to kind of pinpoint it, I suppose.
I love that. Typically a relaxed Australian attitude. Just take it as it comes and just win all the time. Brilliant. I love it. Now, final question, Josh, and this is something we ask all of our guests. We call it the racing genie, and it's kind of like that ultimate wish. So if you could race in any race in history, in any car, and with any co-driver, is the question. Now, to give you an idea, some of our other guests, I'll give you time to think about it here. But Larry Ten Voorde, for example, he said Monaco in a Porsche Cup car with Ayrton Senna as his teammate. Earl Bamber was Dale Earnhardt at the Daytona 500. Which tells you all you need to know about Earl's real passion. Who else? Michael Christensen was Le Mans, Derek Bell with a Porsche 956. So that gives you a kind of broad view of what it could be. So what would your choice be?
Oh my God. Wow. Well, at least one of my main kind of racing idols has been Ayrton, so I suppose that would probably be the teammate. Car. There's been so many great cars over the years. Yeah, I think something that would be kind of insane would be like the MP44 at the Nordschleife, maybe.
Oh my, yeah.
Ridiculous. I don't know. I mean, Le Mans is also big for me too. Oh my God, this is difficult.
It's amazing how it stumps people.
It just kind of puts things into perspective. Ooh. About like, yeah, I think we'll go with that, to be honest.
So the
MP44 with Senna for sure.
And the MP44 that's the McLaren hybrid Formula One car.
No, the MP4-4. I think it's from '88. I think.
My apologies. So that's the turbo McLaren Marlboro.
Yeah, like 1400 horsepower. Hell yeah.
Much better. Yes, that's around the Nordschleife. God. Yeah, that is a scary thought. That is a very scary thought. But like you say, that's a combination that could be created in the sim,
exactly.
Just like that as well. Well, I can see a YouTube video coming on, Josh. A hot lap in the MP44 at the Nordschleife. Well, Josh, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here on the PorscheSport podcast. We wish you all the very best of luck for the 2 rounds that remain. It's looking good at the moment, and we'll be cheering for you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, we just got to keep pushing on and keep it consistent. But no, these are awesome. So yeah, thanks for having me, and yeah, best of luck for the future ones coming up.
Our pleasure. Thanks.
The PorscheSport podcast, powered by Porsche Centre Leeds. Test drive the new Porsche Taycan and experience soul electrified.